Back with you on this great day in the USA throughout the fruited plains of the greatest nation on the face of the planet, the greatest success story the world has ever known, and that is America. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming along with us as we build the bridge to conversation throughout our great nation right here on the CL Bryant Show over the airwaves of Loving Liberty. Loving Liberty. Go to lovingliberty.net or download the app and become a part of the family. And what we do here is, as they say with the epic times, we chase the truth, and we chase that, and we find it. We present it to you so that you can decipher and disseminate and digest things just for yourself. That's what you can do, okay? Just for yourself. And so when we look at the things that or we need to sort out, we were talking to Jeanne Ives just a little bit ago up there in Chicago, who has been not only a West Point grad, but also served in the Illinois state legislature and ran for Congress up there and has her daily show, The Real Story with Jeanne Ives. She was giving us her insight into what could be possible if we do the same thing for Cuba as we do for Iran. I have a friend, my next guest. Do we have him? My next guest, Scott McKay, is one who has written an article for the American for the Spectator, and it's darkness before light. And one of the things that is important to note is that there is a blackout in Cuba right now. They don't have electricity. In other words, things are collapsing in Cuba as we speak. Oh, they're going to need some help, and they're not going to be able to get it from the Russians. Can't get it from the Chinese. And the Venezuelans, well, uh, it, you know, slim chance to none, and none just left town. And so very well, it could be very well possible. And my next guest, Scott McKay, who I've known for years. Do we have Scott? We are going to uh, initiate this conversation, as we have many others throughout the years. Scott has been instrumental in helping me do some things, and many candidates in Louisiana, particularly Elbert Guillory, I can think of, who were Republicans, became conservatives because of some of the things that Scott McKay has been doing. We collaborate with him with Freedom Works to do something that brought Elbert Guillory into the party. And Scott, I want to welcome you to the CL Bryant Show. How have you been, brother? It's been a long time.
Been doing great, CL, and it's awesome to have you back on the radio.
I'm glad to be back, Scott. I was headed out, and then they killed my friend Charlie, and decided to get back in this thing. And I need to drag guys like you back in here. And of course, you've never left, Scott, back in here with me. And so, tell us about this article that you have written, "Darkness Before Light," there in Cuba. What was the genesis of that? What inspired you to write? It's a great article.
Well, so this has been 67 years uh, since Fidel Castro came out of the hills and seized power over there, um, and he's been considered as a folk hero by people on the left in this country, who never really gave a flip about Cubans or Cuba. And what we're seeing is the embodiment of what Margaret Thatcher once said, which is the problem with socialism is that you run out of other people's money. The power grid in Cuba has collapsed because there's not anything fueling the power grid other than a few hydroelectric and thermoelectric plants that the regime has set up, none of which work particularly well. And they have been living off of free oil that they've gotten from Venezuela and Mexico. And essentially, what President Trump did was, well, first of all, um, they turned off the spigot in Venezuela by turning over the Maduro regime over there. And then he pressured Claudia Sheinbaum, who's the sort of the narco president of Mexico, not to give the Cubans any oil for free. And then he threatened tariffs on anybody that sold Cuba oil, which is not, as it's been considered by some in the mainstream media, a blockade. What he said was, we're going to put tariffs on people who sell the Cuban regime oil. You could still sell the Cuban regime oil, and there's plenty of countries out there that probably would do it, but for one very simple fact that no one seems to be willing to acknowledge, which is that the Cubans can't pay for the oil because they've got no economy anymore, and so they don't generate any hard currency reserves, and worse than that, they don't have credit because they burned through the international credit system. They've been a deadbeat regime for most of that 67 years, and particularly when the Soviet Union stopped existing and therefore couldn't bankroll the Cuban regime, you ran out of other people's money. And so
Is it
they are
too,
at
is it, let me ask you this, Scott. Is
go
it
ahead.
too ambitious of us as Americans, especially two old boys like us from Louisiana? Is it too ambitious for us to think that we very well could be in control of Cuba before too long? And the president has already made it very clear that whoever the next leader of Iran will be someone that he is in total lockstep with as far as agreement is concerned. How do you see the end game of this? How's this going to play out, Scott McKay?
Well, I don't think it's off the rails to say that Cuba is going to end up some sort of American protectorate for at least some period of time. It's almost like a company that goes into receivership because this morning Secretary Rubio said Cuba has an economy that doesn't work and a political system that's not capable of fixing it. And the Cubans are essentially at this point, the Cuban regime is negotiating against itself to try to get essentially an American bailout because there's nobody else left to bail them out. And Rubio is taking the position, well, we'll get a plane over there and y'all can all get on it and go to Madrid. And that pretty much is the end of this. At some point, and this isn't even necessarily a governmental takeover. Cuban exiles in Miami are probably going to be the people that are going to run Cuba simply because they're the people that are going to bring supplies and capital that it's going to require to get that country back on its feet. Nobody else can bring the amount of capital to resuscitate Cuban society like America can. And nobody
Absolutely.
else has the people that actually care enough about Cuba to do it other than us. And when I say us, specifically, it's the Cuban community in Miami, which is going to govern Cuba.
No doubt about it. And you know what,
There's
Scott?
yeah,
I'm seeing a lot of private equity beginning to salivate over what's possible in
sure.
Cuba. Yeah, you're absolutely right. If it is rebuilt, it will be by the diaspora that is here. And I think that's right. But I do think there's a lot of American opportunity. You know, Scott, over the last few days, few weeks, well, since we entered into this conflict with Iran, you've had people who should be on our side of this story for instances that you've already referenced. Because I really think the price of gas here, if we complete this thing and do it right, is going to be for for us Louisianians, it's going to be around $2.75 if we can get that Strait of Hormuz going and
Yeah.
take control the way it is. What do you make of the people, Scott, who is particularly on the Democrat side, who think that somehow America is doing something that is absolutely wrong in liberating, and that's the way I look at it. But give us your opinion on liberating Iran and have our eyes on Cuba. What do you think about people who, or what do you think about that faction of our Americana?
Well, I mean, what is driving me absolutely insane is to see, and Joe Kent, who ran the National Counterterrorism Center, uh, quits in the middle of this thing, and and makes the case that Iran is not an imminent threat uh, to the United States, which is like it's a completely non-factual position to take when we were negotiating with these people, and they basically said, "Screw you, we're going to enrich uranium and make nukes, and we've got
Hold
enough to
that
make
thought.
10 of
Hold
them."
that thought, Scott. I got to go to break. I'll be right back with Scott McKay, formerly of the Hayride. We're going to have him tell you about that too when I come back. I'm CL. Don't go anywhere.
I'm new in Chicago. I know.
Back with you throughout the fruited plains of the greatest nation on the face of the planet. And on with me is one of my homeboys from Louisiana. His name is Scott McKay. We met many, many years ago now. And we've been watching this fight develop together. In fact, we've been standing shoulder to shoulder on some of these skirmishes that we've been in here in the country. And he's still down there in the great Bayou state of Louisiana, my home state and his. And look forward to working with him again as we take loving liberty to everybody that will engage with us. We want to engage with them. Scott, tell everybody how they can get in touch with you and how to bring you and your message to where they are. Talk to us.
Well, maybe the two best things you can do is number one, we've got thehayride.com that covers Louisiana and Southern politics and culture. I'm a senior editor at the American Spectator, so check us out at spectator.org, and you'll get maybe the best conservative commentary anywhere on the internet. Also, I'm on X at The Hayride, so check me out there.
The Hayride. And hey, Scott and I know the significance of all of that. Way back in the day, the Louisiana Hayride was a big, big deal. And so it's still a big deal because Scott McKay is carrying it on. Scott, when we look at the violence that is coming closer and closer to home, we have enough Looney Tunes in this country without importing them. I just never thought I'd see the day where Democrats would be so much off the rails that you can't talk to them. The days of Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan, totally gone. Will we ever see that again, or is that being bred out of our children? The art of conversation, the art of negotiation, and compromise, and finding common ground. How do you see our future, Scott McKay?
Yeah, that's a little scary because, particularly with the advent of the media by which we engage each other, and I'm talking about social media most prominently, but also the fact that we don't even share the same airwaves anymore. The idea of good faith conversation to reach a consensus is dying, and it's more really about rage bait and emoting than reasoning. So that's bad. But what I will say is this: I think that whether it's this fall, it may not be this fall, but by 2028 and certainly beyond, like I think the country's going to get really sick of this current Democrat Party. They've been able to sort of get a lifeline out of Trump derangement syndrome. But you're starting to see, like, for example, in New York City, where this Zoran Mamdani is now the mayor, if you can't fill the potholes and you can't shovel the snow, people eventually don't care what you have to say about the other issues because you can't govern. And in every city the Democrats control, they can't govern. And in every state the Democrats control, things get weird. Like you look at Virginia and what's happening over there when the supposed moderate Abigail Spanberger became governor. It's like Jesus said, "You shall know them by their fruits."
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a party that produces great fruits. places that they control, people leave in droves. And
Absolutely.
eventually, yeah. And well, and you say, and we started this off talking about Cuba. Cuba is the perfect example of how this ends. And so the further along you get toward that place, free people will make different decisions. And so I think part of the reason you see so much rage on the Democrat side is because they have to use something to mask the lack of performance. And they don't have anything. And that's not a sustainable position. So I'm somewhat optimistic that American politics is going to rebound to an extent from where it is right now.
Let's ask you this question then, because definitions, I've said this around the country many times. Uh, Definitions determine destinations. When we talk about the definition of what a conservative is, we know that the liberals cannot define what gender is. They don't know what male or female is when asked a direct question as far as that's concerned. But Scott, what concerns me now is that we as conservatives, we as Republicans, even as party members and people who call ourselves conservatives, what how do we what is the definition of that? Now, used to know what that meant when Reagan was president. It was very clear to see what was meant. We know what's contained in "Make America Great Again," as far as the conservative principle and the idea behind that. But Scott, how do we package this message? How do we bring this message and make it palatable, especially young people? How do we do that who are leaning toward socialism?
Well, I think, the Republican Party in the post World War II era was always sort of the anti-socialist party, and defined itself in that way. And Reagan, I think, was made until Trump was probably the only one who was able to package conservatism into something that would resonate with people. And I blame Bush Republicanism for most of the problems that we've had messaging that, because the Bushes didn't really believe in Reagan's message, clothed themselves or cloaked themselves in Reaganism, but at the end of the day, they trashed that legacy. I mean, I go back to George W. Bush running for president in 2000, calling himself a compassionate conservative, which implies that conservatism isn't compassionate. And, that's a whole other discussion about, are you better off with charity, or are you better off with a government nanny state that does those functions? But, you're basically conceding compassion to Democrats when you do that. And so, I think we're in a recovery stage, getting beyond sort of that John McCain, Mitt Romney, George W. Bush style of conservatism that most of the country is well past. But you see all these Republican senators who still date from that era, and these guys are ancient and fossils from a political standpoint, and still don't get it. You just look at it, the younger the senators in the Republican caucus, the better they are.
Hmm.
And I think that reflects the fact that Make America Great Again, I think, is the new package. The problem is you don't have enough leadership within the party outside of Donald Trump for people to recognize that, MAGA really is what the Republican Party is about. 85 to 90% of the voters within the Republican Party get it. But politicians in Washington, and certainly there are some Republican governors that this is true of as well, don't get it and still want to govern as though it's 2006 when the country is not in the same place. America was fundamentally changed with Barack Obama's presidency, and we're digging out from that, and it requires a lot firmer hand on the political tiller in order to steer past all that. And
Absolutely right.
what I would say is, to answer this in a lot more concise manner, is we're still redefining what conservatism is in the 21st century. We would have no definition available had Trump not come on the scene to shake up American politics and create some space to do this redefinition. But it's still evolving because there are some massive challenges that we still haven't even taken on yet. Like, what are we going to do with the national debt?
Yeah.
You know, but
And I want to bring you back on to talk about that national debt, because that is
Sure.
a hot button. We're up against the top of the hour. But Scott, I want to thank you for coming on and bringing that with me. And Scott brings it, folks. Hear ye him, read ye him as well. Again, man, I can't tell you how good it is to hear your voice again. See that you're still in the fight. See that still is Lord. The Lord's still blessing you. He has his hands on your work. And I encourage you to keep fighting the good fight, my brother. God bless and keep you.
Thanks,
Talk to
CL.
you soon.
Take care.
I'm CL. This is the CL Bryant Show. And I want to thank Scott McKay for being on with me. You're going to see a lot and hear a lot more from him as the show comes back in and gets evolved and gets acclimated to you, and you get acclimated to us. And all of that, we'll have guests on like Ives and Jeanne Ives and Scott McKay. And we'll have guests on like Dr. McMillan. We'll reach back and get Hannity on the air for you. Dan Bongino's free now. Even Pete Hegseth started out coming on this show. And so we'd like to bring all of them to you across America over this platform, Loving Liberty, because every one of them definitely loves it. And so do I. I encourage you to do the same. Listen, until next time, I'm CL. God bless and God keep you all.
Lord, I'm going back home to stay. Well, back home I know, flood the tornado. Baby, the sun shines on every day.